cognac.
In our last episode discussing Astrophil and Stella, I didn't really tell you much about this sequence. Astrophil and Stella is the story of a man named Astrophil, which is a Greek learned word meaning star lover. It's the Greek word astro, star, with the suffix phil, lover, so it's star lover. It's a learned word. It's not a real Greek word. And the girl he loves, Stella, and that's Latin for star. So it's a kind of, as a professor at UCI used to describe it as, it's kind of like a Hollywood movie. Now it's written by Sir Philip Sidney, and Sir Philip Sidney was a soldier, just like Garcilaso de la Vega, and he also died young at the age of 31 in 1586 after an attack on a Spanish baggage train. He was shot in the thigh and died of infection. Garcilaso, as you know, died at the age of 35, 50 years earlier in France. So it seems like writing sonnets can be very dangerous. Surrey, my favorite, was beheaded by Henry VIII at the age of 30 in 1547, while his partner Wyatt died earlier in 1542 at the age of 39. Now, Sidney was a courtier, the son of a prominent politician. He himself was becoming a politician. He was very educated. He was educated at Oxford. The sonnet I want to look at for this episode is sonnet number 71. This sonnet happens once Astrophil has gotten over the fact that Stella has left him to be married to another man, it seems. And then somewhere around sonnet 66 to 69, she seems to be back in his life. Hope reappears. 71 fits into this chronological scheme. It's a fascinating sonnet. Remember, sonnets are 14 lines, and we've already went through their structures. What makes it fascinating is because it seems to abandon all the pretexts of the spiritual lady Sidney inherited from Petrarch and, of course, Dante. So let's listen to it.
Who will in fair's book of nature know how virtue may best lodged in beauty be? Let him but learn of love to read in thee, Stella, those fair lines which true goddess show. There shall he find... Oh, wait, never mind. Wait, restart.
Okay, go.
Who will in fair's book of nature know how virtue may best lodged in beauty be? Let him but learn of love to read it in thee, Stella, those fair lines which true goodness show. There shall he find all vices overthrow, not by rude force, but sweetest sovereignty of reason, from whose light those night birds fly. That inward sun in thine eye shineth so, and not content to be perfection's heir. Thou dost strive all minds that way to move, who mark in thee what is in thee most fair. So while the beauty draws thy heart to love, as fast thy virtue bends that love too good. But odd desire still cries, give me some food.
What is its rhyme scheme? No. A. B. B. The. B. Show. No. This is looking like the Petrarchan octave. Overthrow. Sovereignty. Fly, which is the same. Flee. Sovereignty. So. This is the Petrarchan octave right here. Does it continue? Air. It does not. Move. Fair. CDC. Do you remember this? This is how the sestet begins with the first tercet. But then love, D. We have a quatrain. Even though it starts here as if it is the first tercet of the sestet following the Petrarchan octave. And then good and food, which are also rhyme schemes. You have to think about how good in food or love and move actually do rhyme in 16th century English. What about its meter? The last poem we looked at was in the Alexandrines, 12 syllables. This one, decasyllabics. We're back to the traditional line of English poetry. Who will in fairest book of nature know? And you can also see where the caesura is, right? The caesura is after book, so that makes it an inverted caesura or a 6/4. It's after the sixth syllable. In its Petrarchan octave, ABBA, ABBA, it begins with allegorical figures. We have nature, we have virtue, and we're trying to figure out how Stella fits into the book of nature, which is an old medieval image. Who will in fairest book of nature know? Nature is the allegorical figure. How virtue, that's an allegorical figure, may best lodged in beauty be. Let him but learn of love. Love in that case is also allegorical to read in thee. If you want to learn how virtue is lodged in beauty, and you want to learn about love, all you have to do is read Your Fair Lines. The role of virtue in relationship to love and nature is something worth thinking about. And it's explored in many of the sonnets. Stella's fair lines, those are her curves, right? She's beautiful, as well as the poetry she represents. Now we have to think about virtue though. Remember, in the context of the story, she is unhappy with her husband. The adulteress is a possibility. Anyway, her beauty pours forth out of this book, both nature's book and Astrophil and Stella, and is the most natural instruction for learning love. If he reads into Stella's lines, there shall he find all vices overthrow, not by rude force, but sweetest sovereignty of reason. Love and reason, with no vices, moral or rhetorical, to be found. Learning is the idea that will be undone here. Then he gives Stella some action. A new rhyme scheme appears, CD, CD, that both begins the Petrarchan sestet, but also, as we now learned in the last episode, initiates a quatrain. Her activity is to move minds capable of seeing her. The, you noticed, is a ploky, and it's repeated twice. But the final line of the quatrain is the word so. It's a new volta for a new reality. Here's the volta. So, which is in the old Petrarchan position of the tercet. This so makes the quatrain end on an incomplete idea. So what's going on here? The new volta, likewise, is where Petrarch's second tercet would be. But here, it's at the end of a quatrain. Not its beginning like we saw in Sonnet 1 with the and thus. This is difficult poetry to get your head around formally. But it makes sense. These allegorical ideas are too ethereal, they're too elevated, they're too balanced. The fourth line of the quatrain initiates a disruption that breaks up the poem's central idea, Stella's virtue, as reflected in her beauty. You have to think about this within the context of higher love and the fact that Stella is married and the fact that he's after a married woman. Let's pick up with the new volta. So, while thy beauty draws thy heart to love, as fast thy virtue bends that love to good. But desire still cries, give me some food. The New English volta, that rhymed couplet, lands on a startling revelation. Desire, the allegorical figure of desire, just wants to have sex with her. Dante and Petrarch's higher love is completely undone by this baser desire, this appetite. He's on the cusp of having her. The next poems in the sequence lead to a kiss that ultimately undoes their relationship. In 79, there's the desire for a kiss. In 80, he's looking at her lips. In Sonnet 81, he's after a kiss. Oh, kiss. He's addressing the kiss as something not there yet. Apostrophe. And then it starts to look like a movie. In 84, he's looking at the road highway to her house. In 85, I see the house my heart thyself contains. He knows where she lives. He's heading there. Then in the fourth song, it's completely devastating. He obviously makes a move that she does not reciprocate. And look at this devastating refrain. Take to me thee and thee to me. No, 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 my dear, let be. And at this point, she leaves him. Finally, notice before we read it again, the presence not so much of alliteration here, but of traductio, that weaving of a word or root throughout a poem. Here it is the word fair that shows up in line 1, line 4, and line 11, as well as all the allegories that make this sonnet very distinct. So let's read it.
Who will in fairest book of nature know how virtue may best lodged in beauty be? Let him but learn of love to read it in thee. Stella, those fair lines which true goodness show, there shall he find all vices overthrow. Not by rude force, but sweetest sovereignty of reason, from whose light those night birds fly. That inward sun in thine eye shineth so, and not content to be perfection's heir. Thou dost strive all minds that way to move, who mark in thee what is in thee most fair. So while the beauty draws thy heart to love, as fast thy virtue bends that love too good. But odd desire still cries, give me some food. Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell.